The once mighty community activist group ACORN has announced it's closing up shop because of falling revenues. This decision comes 6 months after video footage emerged showing ACORN workers giving tax tips to conservative activists posing as a pimp and a prostitute. The reaction to the videos was swift and harsh. Congress yanked ACORN's federal funding, and private donors held back cash.
Well, there you have it, the report from AP this week. ACORN, for a long time, the country's largest poor people's organization, has decided to close its doors. Were they the victims of a media sting? Has anything improved? Have we learned any lessons? Here to talk about it, Jim Naureckas. He's the editor of Extra, which is the magazine of the media watch group FAIR. Hi, Jim.
Hi.
So, well, first off, what happened here? Why is ACORN deciding to close its doors? It says lack of funds, but what else?
Well, it's a result, basically, of this video hoax that was perpetrated on them, where that story that you just heard is all wrong. You know, you see the guy dressed in the absurd fur coat and hat. That's not what he wore during the ACORN visits, and he did not present himself as being a pimp. He wore a suit and tie, and he said that he was a banker who was trying to help out his girlfriend, who was a prostitute.
Now, how come you know that, but AP still doesn't?
Because I read the transcripts, which they posted online. But everyone else just watched the videos, where he first appears on camera wearing his pimp getup, and then takes that off and goes in, and he's holding the camera, so you don't see what he's wearing in the actual scenes where he's talking to ACORN. And they give them sort of a sob story about this woman being abused by her pimp, and she needs protection, and elicit sympathy from the ACORN advisors. And then they take out of context quotes from those conversations, and they use them to bring down the most effective advocate for the poor in the United States.
No, it wasn't just AP, although they've had months and months and months to look at that transcript and get it right, but also the paper of record. If they hadn't looked at that transcript in the first place, talking about the New York Times, you certainly drew it to their attention.
Well, it started out on biggovernment.com, which is sort of a Drudge spinoff, and then Fox News picked it up in a big way, and it was like, you know, wall-to-wall ACORN. You know, and ACORN had been like the big boogeyman for the right for a long time, you know, stealing elections and so on. And Barack Obama was the cat's paw of ACORN. And people like Clark Hoyt, the public editor for the New York Times, and Andy Alexander, the ombud for the Washington Post, were like, why isn't our paper picking up on this story that's all over Fox News? You know, they have a legitimate story. And it was, you know, they get criticized for being, you know, the liberal media all the time. And here was a chance for them to say, oh, no, we're not liberal. You know, when we see a good story, we jump on it. And they use no critical faculties whatsoever.
All right, so but you brought their attention, you brought Clark Hoyt's attention to the transcript. You suggested maybe he'd been taken in by a video hoax. You showed him how it might have happened. He issued a comment this Sunday in the paper, just a day before ACORN's announcement came out, in which he said, yeah, it did look as if they'd been, what did he say? Mistakenly reaffirming falsehoods.
It wasn't their fault. You know, it was actually brought to his attention 6 weeks ago by a blogger, Brad Friedman from Brad Blog. And it's worth going online and looking up the conversations between him and Clark Hoyt, because the rationalizations were bizarre about why, while it seemed like the Times was wrong, really, if you construe the language in the most unlikely, convoluted way, really kind of the New York Times was right. And so for 6 weeks he didn't say anything. And then FAIR put out an action alert. We got hundreds of letters to Clark Hoyt, and he decided that maybe he ought to take another look at this.
So, okay, having established that the New York Times made a mistake, AP also continues to make the mistake, are they going to run a correction?
They ran a correction, but they corrected the idea that he was dressed up like a pimp, but they still maintain that he presented himself as a pimp in these meetings, when you can clearly see from the transcripts that was not how he initially presented himself. He was trying to present himself as an outsider helping out a victim of a pimp. And the New York Times reaffirmed that mistake in their correction.
We'll put links to the correction and to Clark Hoyt's story and your reporting at our website, GRITtv.org. Are there any lessons in what happened here?
Well, I think that the lesson is that the corporate media is really eager to be fooled by the right. They want to prove that they're not, part of this liberal media conspiracy. And so if they see a story that looks like it has the shadow of legitimacy, they're going to jump on it.
Jim Naureckas is the editor of Extra, which is the very good magazine of Fair, where, in the interest of full disclosure, I used to work. So check it out at grittv.org. Thanks for coming in, Jim.
Thank you, Laura.